This podcast is sponsored by the book, A Mostly Magnificent Memoir, by Bo Bennett, a hilarious, heartfelt glimpse into growing up in the 80s. Grab your copy at thestoryofbo.com.
The untidy charm of grunge, how 80s pop culture set the stage for a fashion revolution. Discover the quirky history of grunge fashion, tracing its roots back to the flashy 1980s pop culture and how it reshaped style forever. The grungy path from 80s attitude to 90s fashion revolution. Alright, so picture this. The 1980s were all about big hair, shoulder pads that looked like they could bench press a car, and neon colors brighter than a traffic cop's vest. I mean, 80s music, 1980s pop culture, and 1980s fashion had a certain flamboyant panache. You had your flashy 80s celebrities strutting in outrageous costumes, 80s TV shows full of drama and spandex, and 80s movies that gave us iconic villains and even bigger hair. But then, as the calendar flipped over to the 90s, something surprisingly opposite started gaining steam, the whole grunge fashion vibe. And buddy, it wasn't just a style, it was a statement. So, let me tell you how grunge fashion history basically exploded out of Seattle's rainy gloom and flannel shirts to become the rebellious wardrobe anthem of a generation. It's like the ultimate I don't care aesthetic that somehow cared enough to change everything. From 80s excess to 90s minimalist mess. Here's the kicker. Grunge didn't just pop out of nowhere. It was actually a reaction to all that 1980s fashion over-the-top craziness. While 80s music was rocking with synths and glam, and 80s celebrities were basically walking disco balls, grunge was the scruffy kid in the corner who didn't want to wear a suit or have teased hair that looked like a cotton candy monster. By the late 80s, a group of bands from Seattle, think Nirvana, Pearl Jam, Soundgarden, were musically smashing the scene. Kids who were sick of the shiny plastic 80s look started showing up at shows in worn-out jeans, beat-up boots, and yes, the iconic flannel shirt worn open over a stained t-shirt, totally counter to the neon and leather trends of the time. Flannel shirts. Not just a fashion choice, but a lifestyle. These were cozy, affordable, and perfect for layering in the Pacific Northwest's chilly weather. Ripped jeans. Because who needs brand new pants? The more holes, the better, it said. Look, I'm too busy being deep and philosophical to care about shopping. Doc Martens and combat boots. Practical for stomping through Seattle's rain and metaphorically stomping on 80s glam culture. Messy hair and minimal makeup. If you looked like you just rolled out of bed, congratulations, you fit right in. Grunge fashion, more than just clothes. Grunge was wrapped up in the music and the culture of the early 90s, but it wore its heart on its torn sleeves. It was anti-establishment, anti-materialism, and dripping with the kind of angst that made for killer lyrics and comfy attire. Remember, 80s TV shows and pop culture often glamorized the glitzy lifestyles, but grunge was like flipping that script and saying, nah, I want to be real messy, real ordinary. And this wasn't about designers or runway shows. It was punk DIY meets the working class that gave birth to this look. Grunge fashion was thrift stores and hand-me-downs, not high-end boutiques. It was borrowing your dad's oversized cardigan and wearing it like a badge of honor. A quick look back with a fun twist. If you were a kid growing up in the 1980s, watching all those flashy music videos and tuning into 80s TV shows, you probably never imagined that soon you'd be swapping leg warmers for ripped flannel shirts. But here's the cool part. Grunge fashion legacy wouldn't exist without the 80s. The contrast made it pop. It was a seamless transition from 1980s pop culture's excess to the early 90s raw authenticity. And hey, if you want a little break from all this fashion history and want to cozy up with a great read about growing up in the 1980s small-town USA, check out A Mostly Magnificent Memoir. It's a fun and heartwarming story of a kid from a small town finding his way amid all the colorful chaos of 80s music, 1980s fashion, and the pop culture that shaped an era. So, next time you throw on a worn-out band tee or a flannel over your t-shirt, remember, you're rocking a piece of history that started with a kid in Seattle saying, I'd rather look disheveled than fake. And honestly, that's pretty magnificent.